Hey, welcome to another episode of Business Breakthroughs Podcast. I'm Neal DiPentino. I'm the president of Titan Media Works and your host for this show, where we get advice and direction from those who are down in the trenches, been down in the trenches, and are doing it every single day of their lives. Hey, today we have a very fascinating guest who's spent over 2 decades helping entrepreneurs shift their mindset and find true freedom through his proprietary ARC method. Joining us today from Mindset Malta, Ken Attard. He's a seasoned mindset consultant who believes that simple shift in thinking can transform both your life and your business. So welcome to the show, Ken. Appreciate you being here.
It's an absolute pleasure to be here, Neal, and I look forward to this conversation without a doubt.
Absolutely. We were kind of talking offline about how we, keep things simple. And as I'm, doing your intro, I'm thinking like maybe I overcomplicated it. And maybe that's where I need to start simplifying things a little bit.
Just thinking about it. So actually, it's just because you'd be thinking about it so much. It's thinking about the fact that you want to get it so perfect.
Right.
And a lot of times that actually gets in the way. Rather than just, not thinking about it.
It is so true. I can remember a time, I really wanted to make sure I got your name correctly. People mispronounce my name, and it's understandable. It's kind of a long, hard Italian name that a lot of people, really.
For us, it's not, because Italy's so close to us. So
yeah, well, sure, absolutely. So, but I can remember one time I was very young. I was getting into radio. One of my teachers offered me an opportunity to interview with a radio station in Moscow, Idaho. And he said, listen, the most important thing is that, when you're talking to the guy, don't call it Moscow. That really makes him mad. So Moscow, right? So before the meeting, before the call, I'm like, Moscow, not Moscow, Moscow. First thing out of my mouth, I would love to come to Moscow and be on your radio station. You can guess what happened after that, right? So not so good.
The quickest way to break rapport.
Absolutely, 100%. Hey, let's talk about rapport. Okay, let's talk a little bit about Ken. Tell us a little bit about yourself, if you would.
Oh, wow. Where do we start? Okay, Ken Attard. So if you might be able to, some people might be able to tell as I'm speaking, as you recognized, Neal, I am originally from Canada. Born in Toronto, Canada. Yet I have been living in Malta now for the past 45 years. My parents are both Maltese. The way I look at it is, after 16 years in Canada, my dad decided, I really want to go where the sun shines 300 days a year. I think he was done with the shoveling and all that stuff. We made the shift here. I've been here ever since. I'm here because I truly do love it. It's an island that's 120 square miles. So it's quite a small island. And we have a sister island that I like to get to that's actually smaller. It's about 60 square miles. But I love the smallness. I love being able to reach out and get to people very quickly. I can call up a friend very quickly and say, hey, listen, let's get together. Let's have a cappuccino or something, and have a chat. And we can do that within 10, 15 minutes, wherever we are, really. I started out as a banker. If I'm going way back, was there for about 7 years, moved into sales, started to learn about sales, started to get quite intrigued about entrepreneurship as well, though I was always on the lookout for something else. And then just I had an opportunity to move in with a smaller company where I was still doing some sales, became a director at that point in time, and then as well, then completely moved out on my own, moved into retail, doing retail. For a number of times between that retail, and then I got involved in some network marketing as well. And this is where the personal development came in. And I started, and I'm very grateful for that time in my life where it really came in. I started to listen to speakers. I started to get intrigued, reading books. And I got very, very much intrigued about the fact that, using the way we think actually can give us or quite a bit of control over the results and the experiences that we're having in our life. And I got so intrigued. And one of the things that really, let's say, inspired me was the fact that there was a lot of stuff that I was learning that I was just like saying, how come they don't teach us this stuff in school? I'm like, come on, why? What's the reason behind this? So it really was inspiring for me. It motivated me to continue to learn. And I've been delving ever since into personal development. and just continued to learn. The nature of the business at that time with network marketing meant that I was getting in front of groups of people on a weekly basis. Sometimes I would have 40 to 60 people in my office on a weekly basis. And then at times bigger events with 400, 500 people. So I was really enjoying the speaking. I felt very comfortable. It wasn't something I had to think about. I could do it quite naturally. And I just continued learning throughout the years. And I was doing a lot of stuff sort of like on the side, believe it or not. Like I was doing some coaching here, some coaching there. And I continued. I got my NLP certification as well, my NLP Master Practitioner certification, which is one particular tool that I do use throughout my coaching and my consulting. But it's one tool. There's so many tools that can be used, and I just continued. And then, believe it or not, it was in the end of 2019 that I made a decision, and I said, you know what? I really feel really, really ready to begin to get my message out there even more. And that's when I founded Mindset Malta. It was the end of 2019. I look at it as somewhat as divine intervention because we all know what happened in March 2020. And up until that time, one of my predominant businesses was a promotional merchandise business. And obviously during, 2020, that took a complete nosedive. The last thing companies wanted to talk to you about was something they were going to give away for free at that point in time, right? It's like, we're trying to keep afloat here. We're trying to, and I just continued. I just founded, I created a Facebook page and I was just doing some live videos, giving some generic stuff. And then I just continued to learn even more because there was another learning curve during that period when it comes to, the marketing of yourself online now more than ever and getting the word out and finding ways to get on podcasts and doing this and learning all about that and creating some new programs that, could be online. And that's sort of like what's brought me to today. So, and it's been a tremendous, and I think something that is very valuable to understand is that it is a continual learning process. I'm learning every day. I make it a point every day to learn. And so, and even as I'm teaching, essentially we are students and teachers at the same time. At any given time, any of your interactions with anybody, you're teaching and learning at the same time. So that's sort of where that's brought me to now. There was a lot of things that I learned along that whole path, even the shift from, I look back now, the shift from Canada to Malta, I was 14 at the time. And I was an avid hockey player. And for those of you listening in Europe, ice hockey player. That's something that's taken for granted in North America. Whenever you say hockey, wow. it's like it's just ice hockey automatically. When you're in Europe,
well, I know what you were talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a different story when you're in Europe because it could be field hockey, wow. It could be all kinds of stuff.
Oh.
And so, I essentially went from playing ice hockey to a country that essentially has no ice. Wow. No ice except, what we got in the fridge or whatever. But, right. That's what, so that was huge changes. Yeah. And I look back and it's actually one of the things that is very, very important for any entrepreneurs to be able to accept change and to run with it and be willing to go with it. So it's been an adventure so far, and the adventure is continuing.
Well, it sounds like that. And I love what you were saying about being a coach and a learner at the same time. I think we all kind of fall in, or you should fall under that category. We started this podcast and, it's interesting. I was on my way out. I was thinking about retirement, the whole 9 yards. But then I started, realizing that, what was I going to do? I didn't, and I felt like I still had a lot of information up here that I could provide to somebody else. So, absolutely. 40 years of experience is a lot of experience. But then what I found as I was talking to people is that I don't know anything. I mean, I am like an infant. There are so many intelligent people. Oh man, it's great, and it's been wonderful because I've met so many wonderful people who have such wonderful insight. And actually, I take notes all the time, and I pass it on to my partners and my employees and stuff, saying, "Look, this is stuff that you need to learn. Watch my podcast, and you're going to learn all of the stuff you need to learn, not from me, but from the people who are on the show." But one of the things I really like about what you were saying too, you've got 2 decades of experience in in the trenches, in the field. So this is the stuff that you're teaching now. It's not stuff that you just, came up with on a whim, or you read about, or you saw on a podcast or in a webinar or whatever. You've actually lived the life. So a lot of the stuff that you teach are from your real life experience. Is that true?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I've had some really wonderful experiences. I had some challenging times. I remember when I moved into retail. If you can imagine, I opened a souvenir shop in August of 2000. August 2000. So I managed to get it open for peak season. So August is peak season here in Malta. We rely heavily on tourism, and I opened a souvenir shop in 2000, and had a really, really, really strong first year. I was like, okay, this is working out perfectly the way I imagined it was going to work out. And lo and behold, 2001, we had Twin Towers. Which affected tourism across the border. And I remember to this day, and again, not that I would have ever wanted that to happen, yet I did look up to the sky and say, could you have not at least given me 5 years?
Yeah.
You only gave me 1 year, right?
I get that.
And things started to shift and that. So, and so that was a huge learning curve as well. Another really interesting lesson that I learned there was I actually held on. By the time it was 2006, I had three retail shops. Yet they just weren't working the way I wanted to them. And, one would be doing well, the other wouldn't be doing well. And I was just, robbing Peter to pay Paul. And it was just a bit of a, and one of the real important lessons that I learned there was one of the shops, if not all of them, but one particular, the first shop I had opened, as an entrepreneur, when our ego starts to get in the way a tiny bit and this shop was my baby, we start to say, I really don't want to let it go. I held on to that shop probably for an extra 2 years that I didn't need to. And I think this is a really important aspect, even when it comes to something that I like to call true freedom nowadays, because this is where I like to take entrepreneurs more than ever. I mean, any individual, but my focus is on entrepreneurs. Is I want entrepreneurs to understand, how you can actually have true freedom. And one of the core elements of having true freedom is coming to a point where you really don't care what you think other people are going to say, what you think other people are thinking, and really and truly just letting that go. Because I can guarantee you that part of the reason that I held on to that shop at the time was, I was thinking, what are people going to think? I have to close, potentially going to think I'm a failure. I haven't made it, and all this stuff. And you know what? I'm excited to break it to the people that are listening here. They're not thinking about you. They're not caring about you. They don't care. It doesn't matter. And it's just all part of the game. And, and it's not a, and when you're going through it, it doesn't feel great yet. There's so many magnificent things that are going to come out of that. And it's getting yourself to the point, the mindset where you understand that whatever's going on, is always to your advantage. It's always working out for you.
Yeah, there's always a silver lining someplace, some way, somehow. And you talk about, the Twin Towers, 9/11, the pandemic and things like that. And all of those were just terrible, terrible things. But I mean, obviously, you're talking about how, in 2020, you kind of changed, the direction you were going with your business and started coaching and building that business and building the whole process and everything. I want to get into a little bit, if I can, if you wouldn't mind. You have a proprietary program called the ARC method.
ARC method.
Can you tell us what the principles of that method would be?
Sure, absolutely. I love it. And the ARC method. So the cool thing about the ARC method is this. I have various programs that I have, yet the ARC method underlies every single program. In the sense that it's intertwined, it's woven in every single program, simply because, as I was explaining to you before, the ARC method, I chose the name ARC simply because in the architectural world, an arc or an arch is one of the strongest foundations it's one of the strongest foundational structures in architecture. And the ARC method is a very strong foundation when it comes to your mindset. So essentially, the ARC method is made up of 5 pillars. And those 5 pillars, they start with awareness, which essentially is learning, and being willing and open to learning. Because everything starts from awareness, because what you don't know, you don't know. And then on top of that, and I think this is absolutely crucial, is that what you do know, what you have been taught, is not necessarily the truth. So you may have been, yeah, go ahead.
Can you give an example of what you're saying? I mean,
Sure, absolutely. I'm going to give you one. That's one of my biggest pet peeves, and it's and it's for every single entrepreneur out there. For the most part, entrepreneurs, any entrepreneurial event, entrepreneurs are taught that, it's all about action. It's all about taking action. It's all about being on the go. And it's also all about, if you're going to be an entrepreneur, be prepared to suffer, to struggle, to sacrifice, and be stressed out. And it is so ingrained, it is taught so fundamentally that for the most part, the majority of entrepreneurs, it becomes a very strong belief. And as you believe that, that is how it will be. It will be your truth. It will be your truth. Yet it doesn't necessarily mean that it is the truth.
Right.
What if entrepreneurship, more than anything, could be fun? What if it could be impactful? What if it could be inspirational? And now you start to believe that it's all of these things versus all of those other things. And as you start to make that your belief, then you're going to start to be shown evidence of that as you go about your business. Whereas, with a very strong belief of, and I understand why entrepreneurs would have that belief, because like I said, that's how it's taught for the most part. People say, you want to be an entrepreneur, be prepared to suffer right off the bat. Yeah. Like, prepared to struggle. Like, don't expect to be making profits right away. You got to go through all this hard. And you know what? No, on top of that, you're not going to have any time for anything else. Forget having time with your family, forget having time with your girlfriend, your boyfriend, or having any time for yourself to, just take care of yourself. Forget that. Everything is business now. And it becomes such an ingrained belief. So this is a classic example. One of my biggest pet peeves, one of the biggest messages I want to get there out to any entrepreneur is that you can have fun. Will you have challenges? Yes. That is where you're going to grow. And when you learn to actually have fun and find joy through the challenges, now we're starting to talk about true success, true freedom, because nothing can actually when you're mentally prepared, nothing can really get you in the way. Nothing's really going to phase you. Okay, we have this challenge. We have this problem. We have a bit of a cash flow problem right now. Okay, how are we going to move through this? Okay, and this will take me to, second that. So that's an example of the learning, of the awareness, of becoming more aware of the fact that maybe what you've learned so far isn't exactly the truth.
Right.
It automatically takes us into the second pillar, which is adapting. We've already talked about this a bit. And that's all about change. I mean, classic example, we've already mentioned it, is, during again, really don't want to talk about it a lot yet. During COVID, a lot of changes happened. You either were going to adapt, you were either going to find ways. I mean, essentially, potentially, we wouldn't even be speaking here had that not happened, had we not both adapted, in the sense that, I live on an island that's 120 square miles and has 500,000 people on it. I want to reach out to far more people. How am I doing that? Through technology. I'm adapting. I'm learning how to get online, how to market myself more online, how to make the shifts, how to make changes. And throughout the journey, making those changes. If I look back at my life and I go back to, like I said, going back from when we shifted from Canada to Malta, it's a change. You're changing the way. The education system here was far different than what it was in Canada. Another change, adapting. Now, I wasn't aware at the time that I was actually going through those processes of learning how to adapt, how to change, how to make new friends in a completely different country, how to understand a completely different culture, and all of these things. Yet now, with purpose, when I teach someone and say, listen, be ready for change. That's the only constant. That's expected. It's going to happen. Right now, something phenomenal is working in your business, and this is working. In a month's time, it might not be working anymore, and you might have to adapt. You might have to shift. So that's the second pillar of the ARC method. The third pillar is alignment. Key, so crucial. It's right bang in the middle of the 5 pillars. There is a reason that it's in the middle of the 5 pillars, because alignment is something I find is absolutely phenomenal. When I say alignment, it's tapping into something. Call it whatever you'd like to call it. It's bigger than you. Call it consciousness, call it source, call it God, call it the divine. I like to call it something that I coined a little while ago now. I like to call it the umami self. Why do I call it the umami self? In the food world, for those of you who might know, umami is that flavor that is indescribable. The definition of it is the essence of deliciousness. Hence, the umami self is the essence of the deliciousness of who you truly are, who you really are. Because a lot of people have this, this perception of who they are, and this physical body. You're much bigger than that. You're much more than that. And you can tap into that essence, whether it's through some quiet time, through some meditation, which is basically one and the same, more or less. And it's tapping into something that's big. And when you tap into that, all of the resources that you want, all of the resources that you need are there. And this is why, again, when it comes to, the awareness of how entrepreneurs are taught and how to, to purposely be taking action all the time. And it's another sort of like pet peeve of mine, is that it's not about taking action all the time. It's actually, I've discovered that there's a phenomenal difference between taking action and taking inspired action. And this is what alignment is about. It's about inspiration. It's about drawing inspiration to you rather than chasing it. And to do that, you really need to align so you actually start to draw that into you. So giving a classic example, a lot of times an entrepreneur, I really have to ask them and say, listen, right now, the first thing I want you to do is stop. And they're like, stop? I can't stop. I can't stop, because if I stop, someone else is going to get there before me, because this proverbial pie of abundance they're coming from a place of lack. So they think someone's going to take up that piece of the pie, and they've taken something from them. Yet when you're coming from an abundant mindset, if you have a proverbial pie of abundance and someone takes a slice of abundance away from abundance, you're still left with abundance.
Mm-hmm.
And it's learning how to understand. So a lot of times I got to get them to stop. Why? So they actually slow their brain waves down enough so they can receive inspiration. So many entrepreneurs are chasing. Yet the best ideas they get, they're in the shower at the end of the day. They've actually slowed themselves down enough, and they're not thinking. And boom, there's enough space for inspiration to come. And all of a sudden, the solution, the idea comes to them because they just slowed themselves down. Now, they didn't do it on purpose. What if you learned how to do it purposefully?
No, I mean, that makes perfect sense to me. I think one of the things I think is common from when I'm interviewing coaches, especially mindset type coaches, is that one of our biggest problems as entrepreneurs, as business owners, is we just get in our own way. And we have to kind of get out of our own self in order to maybe proceed to the next, whatever that might be, whatever that looks like. Hey, listen, we are really getting close to the end, and I know you have two more pillars. So what I'd like to do is this, okay?
Sure.
What I'd like to do is this. We're going to have to, cut this short here, but I'd like to bring it back to the show, and I want to do a part 2.
Sure.
Okay, so we can continue with this. So would you be open to that?
I would be absolutely open to that. We got so much more to talk about.
Well, this is like a cliffhanger type thing. You know what I'm saying? It's like there's more to come, and the best is still to come. We're gonna have more conversation with Ken here. So, hey, Ken, again, we're just about to the end of our time. Is there any final thoughts quickly?
Yeah, sure. No problem. Final thought. And I always like to finish with this. Listen, remember to laugh a lot more, especially when you can laugh at yourself.
I love that. That's great advice. I appreciate that. And Ken, if our audience would like to get in contact with you, how would they go about doing that?
Absolutely. They could just simply send me an email if they'd like to, ken@mindsetmalta.com. They can find me on LinkedIn. They can find me on Instagram, Mindset Malta. They can follow there, Facebook as well. So whatever option they would like as well. Oh, another last one. They can go to growth4entrepreneurs.com. So growth, the number 4entrepreneurs.com. And I have a surprise for them there if they want.
Oh, cool. Very cool. We love surprises on this show. Absolutely. Hey, Ken, thank you so much for sharing your invaluable insights on the power of mindset. I mean, it's clear to me anyway that a shift in mindset can truly make your business and your life more enjoyable and more fulfilling. So thank you so much for all that.
My absolute pleasure.
Looking forward to part 2 of this. Hey, that's our show for today. So thrilled y'all could be with us. If you enjoyed today's episode, please don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review. Business Breakthroughs is sponsored by Titan Media Works, providing podcast production and guest booking services for those who want to be in the podcasting space. Check us out at titanmediaworks.com. That's work spelled WORX. And also check out all of our other great hosts on the Small Business Delivered Network at smallbusinessdelivered.com. Hey, until next time, keep on breaking through. Look forward to seeing you again. Have a great day. Bye-bye.